I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents. Senate Republicans usher same-sex marriage down the aisle, and we speak to one man who refused to hold his peace.
We have a two-minute limit, Senator.
Oh, you don't want to hear? I'm sorry, I got it. I'm speaking on the bill.
Plus, did lawmakers play a career-ending game of politics on the same-sex marriage vote? Defenders of traditional marriage say yes. And 3 parishes celebrate their faith and revel in their brand new status.
We had a joint meeting of the 3 pastoral committees from the 3 churches, and it was at that meeting that this idea came that on Corpus Christi we should meet together in the park.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Matt McClure has the night off. Well, State Senator Reverend Rubén Díaz, Sr. is one of the New York State Senate's fiercest opponents of same-sex marriage, voting against it in 2009 when it first came up for a vote, and again last Friday when the measure finally passed. The Bronx Democrats' opposition to the controversial measure was on full display the night the Republican-controlled Senate voted yes to grant same-sex couples the legal right to marry.
The bill today is being introduced by Governor Andrew Cuomo, not by Senator Tom Dwayne, and in a complete turnaround from 2009, when every Republican voted against homosexual marriage. It is the Republican Party that will provide the vote to pass this legislation. It is unbelievable that the Republican Party, the party that always defended family values, the party that always protected traditional values.
Sir Diaz, we have a 2-minute limit.
No. That's what I say. Lay it down because I want to speak on the.
We've already got. We did the bill debate. This is explain the vote, Senator.
You trying to succumb me.
Well, we wanted to find out just what else Senator Díaz wanted to say and get his thoughts on New York's political landscape and his own political career in the wake of the passage of Governor Andrew Cuomo's Marriage Equality Act. Ed Wilkinson, Currents' news director, had the opportunity to speak with Senator Díaz earlier today by phone.
State Senator Rubén Díaz, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
We watched on Friday night as you spoke in the state Senate, and it seemed that you felt you deserved more time to speak about this same-sex marriage bill. Could you explain to us why you thought that you should have had more than 2 minutes?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it is not that I deserve more time. It is the rule. See, the rule of the Senate is that when you lay aside a bill, you do it with a purpose to discuss the bill and to be able to explain without time limits. Mm-hmm. And what they did, the governor, people were in the floor. The governor was controlling the floor, and he was giving, instruction, and they decided that, no more times. And they cut me out, mm-hmm. and I was telling, listen, Mr. President, if you're gonna do this, mm-hmm. If you're going to do this, you're going to pass it. Do it with dignity.
Yeah. Some senators complained that they couldn't even get off the Senate floor. Were you literally locked in the chamber?
Yeah, locked in like prisoners. It was unbelievable what they did. They were ashamed of what they were doing.
Yes.
It was, they looked shameful. They looked like, come on, you're going to do this. Do it with dignity. Do it with pride.
Why do you think there was such a rush to get this thing done on Friday night?
There was the governor want to hit in the 11 o'clock news, and that was the gay parade and the Stonewall Democratic Club anniversary. So the governor was telling them, no, we gotta hit the 11 o'clock news. Mm-hmm. And we got to give the gays community this gift for their parade. So their parade could be to take a boost.
Yeah. You were quoted in the New York Times as saying that the Hispanic community does not accept gay marriage.
I know.
And do you agree with that?
Definitely. We Hispanic, the problem is that when they do their polling, they go around and ask people, do you believe in marriage equality.
Mhm.
You know, and when you ask some people, I did that with my minister. You know, I am the president of the New York Hispanic clergy minister,
Mhm.
and I did that. Say, raise your hands, those of you that are in favor of marriage equality.
Right.
And I got some hands up.
Mhm.
And then I asked, okay, let me see the hands of all of you that are against the marriage between a man and a woman, between a man and a man and a woman and a woman. Those of you that are against. And every man went up.
Mhm.
Because when you say, are you in favor of marriage equality, people might think that you're talking about equality in your marriage.
Right.
You and your wife.
Mhm.
Are you in favor of equality? Yes, I'm in favor of equality in my marriage with my wife.
Yeah.
So when they ask the question, are you in favor of marriage equality? That's the wrong question. They should ask the question.
So you're saying that these polls can say whatever you want them to say, depending on how you ask the question.
That is correct. And and we all know that whoever's conducting the poll, the question could be asked in any which way that you want the people to respond. But when you go to the Hispanic community, 80% of the Hispanic community are against gay marriage, and the black community are against gay marriage.
Senator, would you explain to us why you believe that same-sex marriage is wrong?
Besides being a pastor, besides being a preacher, besides being a minister, believing the Bible, besides that, even the modern nature is telling you that it cannot be marriage equality because a marriage between a man and a woman has the abilities and the gift to reproduce. A marriage between a man and a woman doesn't have that ability. And that's what I stood. And I was the only. I made history. I want you to know that I made history because I was the only New York State Democratic senator that voted against same-sex marriage, and I will always wear that as a badge of honor.
Well, how much do you blame the Republicans for this?
150%. They the culprit. Because this is a Democratic agenda. This is not a Republican agenda. This is a Democratic governor with a Democratic agenda. He made the Republican Party a tool of the governor, and they look and didn't scale to bring that to the floor, and then force senators to be the one that made this happen.
Sure.
That is worse. To me, that is even worse than the gay marriage issue.
Yeah. A Quinnipiac poll this morning said that most New York voters would probably vote for same-sex marriage. Do you think that's the way it would go if we put it to a vote of the people?
Listen, the bare fact, that they only wanted to deal with this in a non-election year, and not during election year, is telling you that they are afraid of the people.
Yeah.
Because they only want to do this. They didn't want to do. They never wanted to do this in an election year. They always deal with it in a non-election year.
What do you think the political consequences are going to be for you yourself? Do you think the party is going to mount a strong primary campaign against you?
More threat and more pressure I cannot get because I've been getting all the pressure and all the threats in the world. I believe that they will try. They will try, and I believe that my community will support me, and I will get reelected again by a wide margin.
Okay.
But you never take anything for granted in this life. The only thing that I have proven to people is that I am not for sale. My principle are not for sale, not for lease, and not for rent.
Here in the Brooklyn diocese, our Catholic Bishop DiMarzio has Bishop DiMarzio has said that state legislators are not to be invited to any parish or church events here. Do you know about that, and what do you think about his action?
They should make politicians pay the price for what they did.
Okay.
Because they slapped the church in their face.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Senator Rubén Díaz. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, sir, for inviting me.
Well, stay tuned. New York's same-sex marriage decision came as a decisive blow to defenders of traditional marriage, and some groups are vowing to fight back. When we return, I'll speak to Brian Brown, the president of the National Organization for Marriage. Welcome back. The National Organization for Marriage, it's a powerful marriage advocacy group that became a major player in New York's bruising same-sex marriage battle. Now, days ahead of the historic vote that would ultimately legalize same-sex marriage in New York, Matt McClure spoke with Maggie Gallagher, NOM's co-founder, to read the political tea leaves if same-sex marriage were to become law.
It's a really bad idea for the Republican majority in the Senate to be doing Mayor Bloomberg and Andrew Cuomo's bidding on this. I think it's going to be a political disaster for the Republican Party in New York, a vote for gay marriage that the Republicans will be responsible for because they control the chamber. Is not going to be good for them.
Well, the advocates of same-sex marriage have won the battle, but will the supporters of traditional marriage win the war? I'm now joined over the phone with Brian Brown, president of the National Organization for Marriage, to learn more about NOM's promise to make sure lawmakers who voted in favor of same-sex marriage pay a political price. Thank you so much for joining me today, Brian. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first off, you and your organization have been hard at work to make sure that same-sex marriage did not pass in New York. So what was your initial reaction when you heard that, in fact, it had on Friday?
Well, I was in the gallery during the vote, so I was right there. We knew that it was going to be a tough vote, and it looked like we were going to lose the vote, and that's simply because the Republicans especially had capitulated. They had agreed to even have a vote and not have a referendum. So it was a done deal, and it's really unfortunate, and there are going to be very serious consequences.
Well, along those lines, you sent out an email recently pledging $2 million to, quote, make sure that new Republicans understand that voting for gay marriage has consequences. Now, what does that really mean, and what are you going to end up doing with that $2 million?
Well, first of all, this is not the end of the line. We have to remember that in every state where there has been a direct vote, where the people themselves have voted, and it's not based on backroom deals in the legislature, marriage has been protected. So we are going to work to make sure that that happens in New York. New York has a constitutional amendment process. It requires the legislature, by simple majority, in 2 consecutive sessions, to vote yes on allowing a vote, and then the people of New York will decide. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that the people, especially the 4 Republicans who betrayed their principles, went against their campaign promises, and their prior votes, are held accountable. So we're going to be spending money in the elections, making sure that every single voter in key districts knows which way their senator voted and are able to hold that senator accountable.
Right, 4 Republicans in particular that you're talking about, and 3 Democrats as well. Well, listen, in less than 30 days, New York will be handing out those marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Is NOM considering bringing any legal action against the state in the meantime, or do you know about anybody else that might be wanting to do that?
We are considering legal action. The manner in which this vote was held was absolutely tragic and went against basic norms of democracy and of the state Senate. For example, the governor did not, with the religious liberty language, give the appropriate amount of notice in order to have the vote at all. 72 hours were supposed to elapse before a vote so that people could actually read the bill. Instead, 2 hours before the vote, the chapter amendment on religious liberty came out, and religious liberty scholars were scratching their heads. They didn't even know what this meant. So there are a lot of procedural problems with the vote. They suspended all normal Senate rules in order to have the vote, and even those that voted in favor, the Senate minority leader, attempted to walk out of the room because he was denied a chance to even speak. This is not the way a legislative body is supposed to act. This is more like a banana republic. It's unbelievable that something of this importance was rushed through under the cover of darkness without even obeying the norms of Senate procedure.
Well, think about this now. Why do you think that the Republicans and the Democrats who voted last time one way ended up changing their mind? Are they basically, putting an X on their head right now? Is it political suicide for them?
Well, I don't think that they think that that's the case, because there was an enormous amount of money put into redefining marriage in New York, and promises were made to support Republicans who voted against the people, who voted against protecting marriage. And they believe that the money is going to equal re-election. That's not the case. Money may be able to buy politicians, but it doesn't buy the voters. And the opposition to same-sex marriage is quite strong in all four of the Republican districts, and also the 3 Democrats who switched. So I think they've made a terrible miscalculation, and the people are eventually going to hold them accountable.
And we know that you certainly will. Last question for you, Brian. A recent Quinnipiac poll showed that 54% of New York State voters actually supported same-sex marriage. So with that kind of popular support for the measure, do you expect that NOM's efforts in this arena will be an uphill battle?
No, not at all. We saw quite similar polls in California and in Maine. We were told that there was absolutely no chance to pass a constitutional amendment in California. All of those predictions were false. The polls in Maine showed us losing. Those were absolutely false. We've done our own polling nationwide and in New York, and our polling shows that about 57% of New Yorkers support marriage as the union of a man and a woman. As with everything in polling, it depends on how you ask the question, and many of the questions being asked by, for example, the Quinnipiac poll, but some other polls, are biased, and the sampling sizes, the sampling group is just wrong. So if supporters of same-sex marriage actually believe those polls, why are they so against allowing the voters of New York to decide? And why are we so for it? We're for it because it's the right way to settle this issue, but also because we know where the people stand. The people stand for protecting marriage.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, stay tuned. He may not be trending just yet, but Pope Benedict made a highly anticipated appearance on a popular social media site. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up later, 3 parishes become one and celebrate together. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, it may be the legislature who voted, but a new Quinnipiac University poll shows a majority of New York State voters support legalizing same-sex marriage. 54% of respondents said they support a law allowing same-sex couples to marry, while only 40% opposed. Meanwhile, 70% of respondents said opposition from religious leaders would not affect their attitudes on the issue. Well, turning now to the ongoing same-sex marriage fight in California, Proposition 8 supporters are appealing the latest ruling on the measure. Prop 8 defines marriage as a union between one man and one woman. Earlier this month, a federal judge refused to vacate the ruling of Judge Vaughn Walker, who declared the measure unconstitutional. Prop 8 supporters argued Walker should have recused himself because of his being in a same-sex relationship. Well, they thought that was a conflict of interest. According to Reuters, a lawyer representing 2 same-sex couples calls the appeal a smear campaign against Walker. Lots of legal challenges, meanwhile, for Planned Parenthood. First in Kansas, where a new law prevents the organization from receiving any federal family planning funds. The new measure, which could go into effect Friday, also prohibits private health insurance companies from forcing enrollees to pay for abortions. Planned Parenthood argues that the law violates its free speech and due process rights. Well, we have more details on the ruling in Indiana over a similar piece of legislation. A judge there ruled that the portion of the law that requires women seeking abortions to be notified that life begins at conception would remain in effect while she hears the case. The judge has put on hold the part of the law that bans Planned Parenthood of Indiana from receiving federal money. Well, from Texas, a similar bill now heads to Governor Rick Perry's desk. According to the website Life News, the bill defunds Planned Parenthood of at least $34 million and prevents local tax funding for elective abortions. Well, from the nation's capital, Washington Theological Union, a Catholic graduate school of theology and ministry, has announced that it will close its doors for good in 2013. In a release, the school says it has faced a number of financial challenges, including the economic downturn and a decline in the number of religious vocations. The school will stay open through 2012-2013 academic year to allow current students to complete their studies. News from China now, where the ordination of a Vatican-approved bishop has reportedly been postponed because of government pressure. Well, reports say the bishop-elect was taken away by police officers and is currently being looked after by government officials at a guest house. In related news, another bishop's ordination will reportedly take place in China tomorrow without Vatican approval. Well, from Rome, it came a day earlier than expected. The Vatican has unveiled its news portal. Its new news portal. Pope Benedict sent his first tweet to announce the launch. Benedict wrote, "Dear friends, I just launched News VA. Praised be our Lord Jesus Christ. With my prayers and blessings, Benedictus the 16th. Well, the news site brings together news from the Vatican's different outlets, including Vatican Radio, the Vatican Television Center, and Vatican Information Service. Well, stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we return, changing diocesan realities creates an opportunity for 3 parishes in Brooklyn.
Everyone that I spoke to so far said it was a beautiful experience of joy and worship of the Lord and getting to know one another.
And finally tonight, I'm sure that I don't have to tell you just how much times are changing when it comes to the church. Demographic shifts, with many Catholics moving out of New York, declining mass attendance, and underused church buildings are only some of the reasons why the Diocese of Brooklyn recently embarked on a reorganization of parishes to promote the long-term vitality of its churches in Brooklyn and Queens. Now, there is no doubt that this process has been painful for many on both sides of the issue, but there is one parish, or actually 3, that are taking the reorganization as an opportunity. St. Gregory the Great, Our Lady of Charity, and St. Matthew. Well, they're all uniting under the banner of St. Matthew Church. And on Sunday's celebration of Corpus Christi, all 3 parishes met at Brower Park in Crown Heights to celebrate the feast day and their faith as one.
Jesus leads us to move out to others and to love others. Amen? Amen. Especially since now we are celebrating that we are one parish, 3 different communities.
Where the church communities of St. Matthew, Our Lady of Charity, St. Gregory the Great, we had a joint meeting of the 3 pastoral committees from the 3 churches. And it was at that meeting that this idea came that on Corpus Christi we should meet together in the park to show that our unity comes from Jesus in the Eucharist.
The parish of St. Gregory has been configured with the parish of St. Matthew and the former parish of Our Lady of Charities.
The merging began on February 1st. All the parishes went through a self-evaluation, and we, along with the diocesan committee, came to the conclusion that the 3 communities here had to merge together to grow and to become stronger.
In view of the scarcity of clergy, and also in view of the financial realities, it is more feasible that we have a common administration, while at the same time we have 3 worship sites. The configuration has been very smooth here. The people understood the importance of the merger. That did not mean the closing of the worship site or the elimination of this community. That would have been extremely difficult and extremely painful. But as long as we remain at a vibrant worship site in communion with the other 2, I think this was readily accepted.
With all 3 churches together, we're able to worship together, and there's more people coming to Mass now because of that. So I'm actually for it.
I was scared that they would move, everything will get turned, topsy-turvy, but that didn't happen, obviously.
Jesus! Jesus! I worship you! I worship you! I believe in you! you. I believe in you. I want to remain in communion with you.
Today, the Feast of Corpus Christi, we had the Eucharist celebrated at the three sites as every Sunday. And then at the end of the celebration of each Eucharist at each church, we had a procession. Each church had its own procession, a Eucharistic procession that came here to this site, to Brower Park. We all gathered here together then from our processions, and we sang songs of praise around the Blessed Sacrament. We had scripture readings around the Blessed Sacrament. We had preaching in English, Spanish, and Creole around the Blessed Sacrament. It was just a wonderful experience today. I think everyone that I spoke to so far said it was a beautiful experience of joy and worship of the Lord, and getting to know one another. Another step in getting to know one another as three churches in one parish.
What a nice celebration there. Well, that is all for this edition of Currents. Be sure to stay tuned for our continuing coverage on the same-sex marriage vote in New York. We will also bring you an annual feast day celebration in the Haitian community. And you'll also want to keep your finger off that remote or that dial, because if it is Tuesday night, it is yet another new episode of Net's favorite foodie show, Breaking Bread. And it's coming up right at 8 o'clock, right after our show. Make you hungry. Well, last night we also asked you for your thoughts on New York allowing same-sex couples to marry, and our viewer Janie J dropped us a line to say this: "It is not right for two men or two women to marry. To me, marriage is only between a man and a woman." And then she goes on to say the politicians should care for us people who lost jobs. Well, if you have an opinion, we'd love to hear it, and just share your thoughts with our audience. Just send us an email drop us a line at currentsny.net. We'd love to hear from you. So for all of us here at Currents, I'm Francesca Maxime. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.